I would do my client a disservice if I don't share best practices.
Right.
We don't want to be transactional in the offer stage. Well, I don't want to be transactional with my clients. If it's
Okay.
the right client that I'm helping that has an open mind, a growth mindset, and I come in, I can transform everything that's happening in their organization. Not even just recruiting, but how they're thinking of sometimes even growing. Never assume that because things went well, that you're 100% going to close this rock star. The number one mistake that I see in the offer stage is waiting too long to extend the offer. And sometimes it does take too long because there's some hesitation or there's red tape that gets in the way with whoever's approving the offer.
The big question really is, are these the main points to cover in closing, besides negotiations, and what do you do after closing?
Well, there's an onboarding process too. So the onboarding, definitely keeping the momentum between, like, there's a lot of a time gap between when they accept the offer to when they actually physically are in your company.
Yeah, I think
So that's, and I see things go wrong there.
Okay.
So yes, part of it could be setting expectations in the beginning and then talking about, formalized touch points and tracking certain metrics, giving a little bit of a learning curve. But then, hey, like if you don't see I think that could be involved in. Never ever, this may be another assumption, it just came to me. Never assume that because things went well, that you're 100% going to close this rock star.
Yeah.
That should never be the assumption. You should be on your, how do you say it? Bring your best foot forward in this step. Because if you don't, all of that hard work that your team just put in, all of those efforts are going to go down the drain. And you're going to say, why didn't we do this? Why? You could be shocked at this point where a rockstar just declined your offer because you didn't approach the offer stage in the right manner. Sometimes a company feels they're great and everything went so well. Your guard is down a little bit. You don't want that to happen.
What's worse than that? Because you put so much effort, you start getting excited about working with this person.
Yeah.
And not only that, but now you've wasted like a month and you still have a role to fill. So like your business case becomes more urgent, and you got to start all over. I think that would be very scary proposition for a business, especially if they're really trying to fill that role quickly. And
losing time, losing money, losing the momentum to increase your ROI, that could get lost with the wrong strategy. Maybe mentioning it like that. Hey, if you approach this with the wrong strategy, well, guess what? You're decreasing your acceptance rate by 50 to 100%. Do you want that? No. The number one mistake that I see in the offer stage is waiting too long to extend the offer. And sometimes it does take too long because there's some hesitation or there's red tape that gets in the way with whoever's approving the offer. The assumption is, remember, like maybe a reminder here, the Rockstar has 3+ companies reaching out to them on a daily basis. And they have 3+ offers, whether right in hand or a company's about to extend an offer to them. That's the assumption throughout this process. So you're looking to close the deal and they're getting amazing opportunities handed to them by other companies too. Do you think it's a good or bad idea to let a few business days pass by before you extend an offer, before you approve an offer? That's really the point I'm trying to make. If that's happening in the background, that type of activity outside of your company, one business day could ruin this whole process. It's nice to think that we are the most important company and this rockstar loves us so much. They really were showing interest, but the ego kind of has to go down a little bit during this step. And the reality is, again, they're being approached continuously, daily. Again, they're a rock star. Remember, rock stars are not just everywhere. You can't just find them everywhere. Quick story. So I was helping one specific professional that was highly, highly interested in my client. And this was an animal healthcare client that I have. The candidate had an offer with a pretty tight deadline with another company outside of my client. And they had a final interview. Everyone was on board that this person would be a great team member, but the CFO, who was part of the approval process, wasn't able to approve the offer in a timely manner. My recommendation is let's get the offer out within 1 to 2 business days, if possible. You're not waiting a month. You're not waiting weeks. Like, this is high urgency and high momentum has to continue. So this CFO took, longer than expected to approve the offer. The other candidate had a tight deadline on this other company's offer. And although my client was their top preference, they also didn't want to be in a bad situation where they don't have an offer at all.
Right.
There was nothing in writing. There was no security in that this company is going to extend it because they didn't have the offer. And again, it was going through the approval process. So unfortunately, 1 business day turned into 2, 3, 4, 5. All of a sudden, this person can no longer extend the other offer that they have. Sometimes they can get an extension, a couple of business days. But it can't go on forever. That other company will say, okay, well, we're moving on to the next candidate. Let's remember, like, if they have another offer on the table, they are also risking. This is what they feel. They feel, I'm risking this other company, which is my second preference. But now I don't know if my first preference is going to come through. What do you think? There's no confidence if it's taking too long. So they'll just say, hey, I've accepted another offer. Like, I've had that happen multiple times, but this specific candidate, it just was like 1 business day after the next, promising that the approval will come through, and then too much time passed and he just could not wait any longer. And it does happen. It's happened a lot of times.
And what was the hang up? So the CFO wasn't able to approve, but is that because they just were taking too long to make a decision, or there was some bureaucratic thing there, like some red tape?
It just takes too long. I know it sounds crazy because there are competing priorities when you're at a high level. When you're at that high level, do you need to be involved in the approval process, first of all? If you feel confident you have another team member that can approve the offer, do not allow yourself to be the bottleneck, because you're going to lose a great professional that can positively impact your team, make your life easier. And now you're back to square one, interviewing, doing all, and that's not even guaranteed. Remember, like, just because a rock star is interested doesn't guarantee that they're going to accept your offer. It's not guaranteed. And you let momentum die with each business day. You're letting momentum die.
All right.
I really want that to be emphasized, because no one really says that, but that's what I see consistently.
Will we also talk about this specific nature that you extend the offer? I think this came up before, where it's like the C-suite executive would give them a call themselves and say, hey, congratulations, or versus like a very junior person, or like
So this is another mistake. Yes.
Okay, it's separate. So
that's going to be a separate mistake.
Okay, good. As long as we cover that.
Yes.
Well, this is specifically like timeline of the chronology of extending the offer.
Yes. Yes. Second mistake. You have the wrong person come in and extend the offer and communicate during this sensitive time period. We're talking a lot in this book about the right person, the right who. You have the wrong who come in, you're going to lose momentum. It's like proposing marriage through a friend.
Okay.
You want to marry your lifelong partner, and you're not doing it yourself. You have a friend come in and extend the invitation for marriage.
Yeah.
It loses momentum. Can it still be successful? Like, I can't say 100% of the time it's going to be unsuccessful, but it drastically loses momentum with a rock star that's being approached on a daily basis with multiple opportunities. So it does not work in your favor.
I can see, right, like in a border, like if I'm a rock star and I want to work for this company, I probably won't decline an offer just because the wrong
Yes.
person. But if it's like a borderline case when you're on the
Yes.
fence,
Yes.
then like you don't want to, do everything in your favor. Don't kind of step on your own feet by making unforced errors like this.
Yeah, and David, we talked about this in another chapter. We talked a lot about building rapport. You've built a relationship with this rock star. Why not use that to your advantage to
Right.
increase the likelihood that you're going to secure the deal? You're going to close this candidate. If you don't use it to your advantage, it's like straight up dumb. Like, let's be smarter in this step
Yeah.
and increase the likelihood. Why would you not want to increase the likelihood? And you've put in all these efforts. This stage is sensitive. It's a huge decision for them. Let's remember that. Let's put ourselves in their shoes. Okay, I'm thinking of committing to one company for hopefully a few years of my career and my life. That's a big decision. What's going to help? You've built trust and rapport with a great interviewer, a great leader in the company. Well, we all know trust helps secure deals more quickly, and that's what we need to leverage in this step. Another point to really emphasize here,
Mm-hmm.
we cannot be transactional.
Okay.
So what I mean by this is if you bring in someone that was not part of the interview process, that is turning into a transaction versus being more personalized, leveraging the rapport,
Right.
leveraging the relationship. That's something you want to avoid. The wrong who makes it transactional. The right person that's built rapport makes it personalized and increases the likelihood of a successful outcome. On the flip side, quick story,
Mm-hmm.
like a success story. So this great candidate, and this could be quick, I don't want to go into too much detail, but the CEO was involved in the interview process. The CEO wanted this rock star, that he took it upon himself to call the rock star and congratulate him on the offer. And guess what happened? The CEO is calling me. What do you think goes on emotionally, my decision-making process? All of a sudden, my decision-making process becomes easier. The CEO,
Yeah.
the leader of the organization, is showing me so much respect by welcoming me, asking me if I have any questions. That is how you deliver an offer versus having the wrong person, wasn't even involved in the interview process. Honestly, doesn't even make sense. When you do things like that, you're not building off of the momentum that's being built throughout the various stages of the process. But yeah, that could be like, hey, like this is what you could do. What you could do is have the leader of your organization call,
Mm-hmm.
not email, call, congratulate,
Okay.
and open it up to questions. Now, this is going to be mistake number 3. We'll go into it, but it does flow into that as well.
Okay. Before we get to mistake number 3, I had a question about mistake number 1. Maybe it's even just something that pertains generally to closing, but so I think you mentioned like 2 reasons why there's a delay in breaking momentum. One is like red tape, there's like some kind of approvals process.
Mm-hmm.
If it's this hesitation on the part of the decision maker, they drag their feet or they put it to the back burner. But like when you talk about red tape, tell me a little about that. Is this like a bureaucratic thing where like you just have to pass it around between different departments to get a formal like sign off, or how does that work? And what's the solution?
So it depends. Obviously, if you're in a larger organization, usually it's a multi-layer process. Your interview team might touch the offer, your HR team, sometimes even legal team, CFO. What they can do is think through who can be involved to make it more efficient. Plus, do they have the right benchmarks for an approval to occur? So sometimes it could be on the salary, sometimes it could be on the level. Having that in place could really, really help the efficiency, and not having so many people involved that someone becomes a bottleneck in the process.
Okay.
Identifying the right person, or if it has to be 2 people to approve the offer, the right ones that can get it done within 1 to 2 business days. That would be the goal. The goal would not be to allow too much time to pass by, because again, you're losing the momentum. And I've seen it happen so many times where all this effort's put in and then the offer takes 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month. It's not going to give them the best outcome.
Yeah.
Like put a benchmark of 1 to 2 business days. We got to get this done. If this is a rock star, again, they're in high demand, supply and demand. Maybe just saying supply and demand here. Maybe like a quick metaphor on that. Like the supply is small.
Yeah.
The demand is high. What do you do in situations like that? Do you let time pass by?
You must be pulling your hair out when that.
Yeah, I'm like, what the exactly? Oh, I'm pissed. And then I'm pissed because you love this person. Why is it taking so long? I try to guide in the soft approach, but do I want to say other things to them? Yes.
I mean, are there any like when it comes to like being able to make a decision, like if I'm a CEO, sometimes it's a matter about just being decisive. I don't know if there's really much advice you can give because it's like you can't teach someone how to be decisive. But this is just like CEOs make 1,000 decisions, and yes, it is one of those difficult things about running a company. But is there any advice you would give beyond just the obvious one? Be decisive. Don't hesitate. Do it.
Let's keep in mind the momentum piece. Let's keep in mind the supply demand to help us with our decision. Let's go with our gut feeling. Let's not sleep on it for too long. Sleep on it for a day and commit to a decision within 1 to 2 business days. Because of the supply and demand issue, prioritize. Big one. Prioritize that decision because of the supply and demand issue. That's what I would say, because they always have to prioritize which decisions do I need to make today. The decision for someone to join your organization, increase your ROI, make your life easier, help your company grow, that is a decision to be prioritized. I think that could really help them because they're always reprioritizing what they have to make a decision on, which action they need to take.
Okay, so I think we were about to go to mistake number 3.
And basically, sorry, in other words, treat this as a high priority item. They have high, medium, some they don't want to take action on for like months, whatever it is. This is a high priority item. Treat it as such. And then that will, once you make a commitment to treat that decision as a high priority item and you see the impact in your organization that this person will make, then it will become easier for them to make a decision more timely. This is where a lot of momentum can get lost too. You've extended an offer, you've done the right thing, the CEO or CFO or another leader got involved, but now there's a gray area. Who does this person ask questions to? Did you make them feel comfortable to ask questions because they're making this important decision for their career too? Let's put ourselves in their place. Sometimes leaders assume that they have all of the information they need to make a decision. And most of the time, they will have a couple of follow-up questions. So the mistake is no one really proactively offered to answer questions. And so they might hesitate to ask questions, and it doesn't build the momentum to keep the conversation going on the offer, because typically the rockstar does have questions as they think through accepting this offer. So my recommendation here to not lose momentum is assign a direct point of contact if you are unavailable for questions, because of course someone at a high level might not be able to answer every administrative question, or let's say it's a benefits question, but assign a direct point of contact that can kind of help them through the process, whichever question that they have. I've seen it work really, really well. The rockstar is already kind of picturing how it would be working for their company, and they're looking to gain confidence in their decision, which again is why I highly, highly recommend to assign a direct point of contact for questions, because that's going to build their confidence level up for them to make a great decision to join your company. And it's going to also speak highly of your brand as well, like your reputation. It's kind of, it hits a lot of different things. Of course, we want to close the candidate, but it also shows what type of organization this person is going to be joining. There's a support system. Sometimes it's even the rock star, if you're sensing they have questions, but there's like some hesitancy, even engaging another team member to have another discussion. It's part of the mistake, but it could also happen like when this point of contact is answering their questions. If they sense hesitancy in a specific area, let's get the right person to speak to them live versus just an email communication. That additional effort will close this candidate more timely and will give confidence to the candidate as well. Sometimes it does take that additional action step in this too. Not just assigning someone for questions, but can they route the question to the right person? And if it's a sensitive question, sometimes a live discussion, like I highly recommend that too. Having a live discussion if needed to build the confidence, because that additional discussion can help them make the decision more timely.
Okay.
Other items. So being proactive in scheduling a call to answer their questions is a great strategy versus they're left in the dark, momentum. We don't know what the hell is happening. We don't know what's happening and they're getting approached on a daily basis with 3+ companies. I don't feel good about that. Don't feel good about that is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. What kind of questions are we talking about here? Like you mentioned, like benefit stuff. Is it like technical things, or is it just give me some examples of what these last?
Yes. Sometimes it could be about the benefits options. Sometimes it could be around the start date, potentially. Okay. Sometimes it could be around clarity of what the team dynamic is going to look like. If they didn't get enough clarity in the interview process, they might want to gain a little bit more clarity into even the role they're actually. Yeah. Some rock stars are highly analytical and think through the details more when they're making a decision. And so these questions might not have came up during the normal interview process. So just knowing they might still have questions, and that's okay, because it's actually a good sign sometimes when someone doesn't just accept your offer. That means they're really they're committed to their next environment. They are really thinking through it and not just saying yes because they know it's a full commitment. So yes, they might still have questions even about the role, and that's normal. Okay,
it's not a red flag or like.
It's not exactly. Don't take that as a red flag. The best rock stars I've seen are analytical. They ask more questions than the average because they want to make the best decision possible and they want to commit to their best decision possible. So yes, it is normal and I've seen it.
No, I imagine it'd be kind of funny if a rock star was like, so what exactly am I doing?
That would be a red flag.
Yeah.
That would be a red flag.
I guess
but it would be more of an in-depth question at this point. If it's a true rock star, it's more of an in-depth question, not surface level.
Right.
They were taking notes during this process. They're being detailed, I should say. They're being detailed.
I know we have on the outline, make them feel like a valued addition to the team. We kind of covered that in all the others because I don't know.
Yes.
Is there something to add beyond that, like little small things you can do to make them feel valued? We'll also cover this in the onboarding.
Yes. They're in this little gray area of making a decision, and your company's having an event, company-wide event, or like a happy hour, or a coffee, or hey, invite them. Guess what? That momentum is going to build even much more. They're going to see other great team members. That's a great tactic to include here. Invite them and have them feel what it's like to be part of your company outside of the interview process. Using a strategy like that could be amazing. I've seen it work really, really well. Or if you really want to put in the efforts and you really love this rock star, create an event just for them, but don't let them know that. We have a team dinner and we would love for you to join. That is an amazing tactic that will yield really great results. And everyone knows, hey, this is a warming to the acceptance. Obviously, you want to be yourself, but you want to show what is it like to be part of this team, be part of all of the other team members that they didn't meet during the interview process that are also amazing. Now, this is assuming your team's amazing. If your team is not amazing, this is not going to work. But those are really good strategies. I would love for them to be in the book too. And it's going to show like, hey, think outside the box.
Yeah, right. I'm picturing like a overeager CEO sending like flowers and candy to their house, showing up at their house.
No, don't want to do that. But an intimate dinner, intimate lunch, you're like wooing them in a way. How can you woo them if you are like, I need this rock star?
Right.
Ask yourself, do you need this rock star? Do you want them so badly? Okay, take additional action steps. The action will yield results.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes one additional effort also, the effect can be they want to start even sooner. Sometimes it motivates them to start sooner because they might not say, oh, I'm going to start within 2 weeks. They have projects with their company that they have to wrap up. They're committed to this other company. They probably have to onboard someone. Okay, well, these steps will help them commit to an earlier start date, especially if you're desperate for this rock star. That is also the impact of taking additional action steps like this.
Yeah.
Even just like the welcome, you know, when if the CEO were to call, the CFO, whoever was in the process, a leader, that's an outcome directly related to that effort. You know, an earlier start date. If they're really thinking, hey, if you want an earlier start date, put in additional efforts.
Okay.
And even explicitly mention, like, we're so excited. We're explicitly saying words to them.
Mm-hmm.
We are so excited for you to potentially join our team.
Yeah.
So excited for you to impact our team in this manner. Those words mean a lot to them and will motivate them to want to start earlier. I've seen that happen too. Oh, well, guess what? I couldn't start for another 2 months, but oh, you know what? I'm really excited to join this company. And it's because they heard so many things like directly from the interview, the leader.
So what if, I don't even know if this is a question that can be answered, but I don't know, like, yeah, in that kind of scenario where the Rockstar A, who's the company's, but they can't start for 2 months. Rockstar B is like a second choice, but they can start immediately. Is that something you would like weigh in on, or does the process of closing change? I mean, I guess if you're a company, you're not closing means you picked one person that you're extending an offer to, right? You're not extending an offer to multiple people and then with like withdrawing, or does that happen sometimes where you kind of like first come, first served? Whoever's ready to commit gets the job.
So that's a good one that I feel we should definitely address. Let's also be very realistic. We could do everything right. It will increase the chances. There's a slim chance that they don't accept. They stay at their company. Sometimes there's a scenario that they just decide to stay at their company. They get a counter offer.
Right.
It's not even a competitor. So how can we de-risk that type of situation? It would be great if we keep momentum with maybe 1 or 2 other candidates that are in the pipeline too. The mistake could be honestly, it's the assumption that we're closing this candidate and there's always a risk that they might stay at their company or another offer last minute comes in from a competitor and you just cannot compete with it. It's even not reasonable. And your company just can't increase the offer, for example, or whatever it is. There are items that you just unfortunately can't change about this offer. So I think a mistake could definitely be thinking that this is going to work 100% of the time.
Okay.
I'm giving them like what could give them the best outcome.
Yeah.
But let's keep a little momentum going with 1 or 2 others that we think are also rock stars.
Well, what does that mean specific? Because that's a tricky one too. Like keep momentum going. Because obviously you want to be, if you're hiring, you want to be sincere.
Yes.
Like how is that done specifically? How do you kind of keep those other leads warm without being?
Yeah. The best way is to mention you are still in the decision-making process. You are being highly considered, but we just haven't made a decision yet. And the momentum is not going to be at the highest, but there's some momentum at least. You're giving them some positive feedback, but you're not committing and saying we're extending an offer.
Yeah.
You're de-risking a little, telling them, hey, we're still in the decision-making process. It gives them the opportunity to do whatever they want to do.
Right.
You're not promising. You're not lying.
Yeah.
It's still it's still a decision-making process. And it's a soft way of saying you're not our number one. I know that sucks to say. You're not our number one.
Yeah.
But we also have to de-risk our situation. And that's okay. As long as nothing is promised to this other person. And I've seen that work well. As you know, the candidate is like, okay, well, they keep interviewing. They're not just going to wait around. So it's a risk. Like, of course, there's always a risk.
Yeah.
But at minimum, they now know that they're in consideration. They're still in consideration. And it might be successful, might not be. And that's okay. It's part of the recruiting process.
I'd like to get some more stories that you can think of like late stage breakdowns in the process. So like situations where the rock star jumped ship. It would be interesting to, I mean, you can tell the story from the perspective of like your client, but if you can also tell it from the perspective of the rock star too, and like get behind their thought process, you know? And
A huge mistake is actually a low ball offer.
okay.
Forgot about that.
Yeah.
That's a breakdown. You've disrespected them now in the offer stage. You are not showing that you value them as a
Oh,
professional, but you want to leave room for negotiation. That's the dumbest thing. The smartest thing is coming in with your highest offer and saying it's just final. That is really smart. We could talk about negotiation too, because they might want to negotiate.
yeah.
But the
We'll talk
smart, if you
about,
want to leave, my recommendation, leave a little bit of room. Don't leave a wide range. And this is a breakdown. That's
okay.
a major breakdown. When a company thinks I'm going to save $20,000, but
Okay.
you're disrespecting the rock star and the rock star is like, this makes no sense. That's a complete breakdown.
Okay. So don't play games with like lowballing.
Do not do that. You have to, at minimum, come at fair market value. If
Yeah.
you're coming in and you haven't done your research on what these professionals are earning in
Uh-huh.
your market, that is a huge breakdown and shows that your diligence process is very shitty and they can't trust that. The rockstar
Right.
wants to be able to trust the company that they are going to work for
Mm-hmm.
years to come. And so this happened to one candidate. He came from the investment banking world. And in that field, if you don't know investment banking very well, they
Mm-hmm.
earn more than the average professional, typically. And so this company that I was working with, they came in with an offer that was way below market value, way below. Didn't do their research on investment banking salaries. And even though they wanted that background, they didn't do that research. It's a different animal, that space.
Okay.
So when they received the offer, definitely a lot of shock to the rock star. Like, this is nowhere near where I'm at.
So the client company, they weren't in investment banking, they were in a different field, but the candidate
Exactly. Yes.
coming in
But
the
they
role.
wanted that type of talent. And it was communicated what the expectation was. But coming down to the offer, there was misalignment between the expectation, what they thought was going to work,
Okay.
from what they approved in the offer. Now, it was still successful, but this is the breakdown. The breakdown is too much of a gap. There was like $20,000 gap in the offer.
Mm-hmm.
When I mentioned, hey, this rock star is ready to just like not accept, this is way below what we talked about, they just automatically jumped up. And I was like, okay, it's not the best approach, is what don't come in and think, oh, we're going to lowball this candidate and we're going to secure the deal. Just doesn't work. And in this case, I was an outside party that could help the situation and remove some of the bias and continue with the rapport and trust that I built with this person. But let's say it was just the company and there was no intermediary. Most likely that person would have just walked away like, something's off here. But I had
Yeah.
to, how do you say, like when a doctor comes in, he has to fix things up. Okay, I had to do that in a soft way. I had to blame things on me versus making this hiring company look bad.
Yeah. I mean, it's like specifically, what did you do? You kind of took the fall a little bit, or said,
Exactly.
how did you?
I don't want a bad strategy. When I know a company's still great,
Uh-huh.
I don't want a bad strategy getting in the way of a successful outcome.
Okay.
When I know they just didn't have the right strategy, like they wanted to save a little bit of money. Doesn't mean that they weren't willing to negotiate and all. They just had a bad strategy from their HR team.
Yeah. Okay.
That's not the best representation of the team as a whole, though. When an HR representative is compiling the offer and they are not mature enough to, in their career, and knowledgeable enough to understand that type of professional. They may not have done their research. You know, going back to the other chapter, just because you hired them for a role doesn't mean they're executing at the standards that you require.
All right, that's good.
I mean, yeah, you know, there's those candidates that are in the gray area, like you said. They might not be 100% sold, but they need additional efforts to build the momentum.
Yeah.
I kept kind of like almost begging my client to call or even email, say congratulations. They never did. They never heard from them in the offer process. And this person was in the middle, a middle ground. My gut instinct being in here for so long, I knew they needed a little push, a little excitement. It didn't get it from the hiring company. You're the hiring company. They're going to be your employee, not my employee. Do you think hearing from me, of course, I'm going to build momentum, but if they don't hear from you, it's going to be very hard for them to feel strongly they want to accept the offer more quickly or even accept the offer at all. So it's a late stage breakdown because momentum, again, is lost. And it happens quite a bit that they don't sometimes hear from the hiring company. Now, I try to educate my clients that, yes, I'm your strategic recruiting partner. This is also, though, a collaborative effort. And this is a sensitive stage in the process. They're making a decision for years to come, and hopefully that will help you retain them too. Because if they're thinking that deeply about their decision, when they think deeply, they're committing deeply. So if they need a little nudge in the process, there's no nudge. I know it sounds basic, but that's a huge breakdown. I hate that because I know that nudge goes a long, long way. I know the respect level increases from the candidate. That's what I see. They don't see that. I know it does. I know it increases. So although it's not something so drastic, and I'm sure you're like looking for something so drastic, just it kills the deal. Kills. Because guess what? Another company is calling them, congratulating them, making them feel warm. If there's no warmth, that's a breakdown.
Yeah.
There's no warmth in this stage. That's a huge breakdown.
And what kind of companies get closing right? What don't? Is there like a pattern? Smaller companies better, bigger companies better? Is there kind of like certain profile, or is it more or less random?
I don't know for sure because I do deal with a lot of middle market companies.
Well, you can talk about that.
But across the board, I mean, the most successful, going back to previous chapters too, they know every detail matters in the offer stage. They know keeping the warmth in the conversations important. They know they need to be there for questions. They already have a structured process to go through an offer. These are the steps we take in the offer. Okay. From approval, timely approval, timely. Put a cap on this approval process. If you don't have a cap, it's not going to work in your favor. Then who's communicating? And then having an offer, a formal offer conversation, scheduling that, walking them through the offer, and even a follow-up conversation to the offer, where sometimes you're even getting a decision live from the candidate.
Oh, okay.
A structured process.
What do you mean live?
Every team member knows what it is. When we go through an offer, this is our process. If you don't have a structured process, this is where things could go wrong. So at minimum, having a strategic plan for the offer stage, that will yield a lot of success.
That's good. So you also help companies devise this plan?
That's exactly kind of like my next stage. I would do my client a disservice if I don't share best practices. We don't want to be transactional in the offer stage. Well, I don't want to be transactional with my clients. If it's the right client that I'm helping that has an open mind, a growth mindset, and I come in, I can transform everything that's happening in their organization. Not even just recruiting, but how they're thinking of sometimes even growing. That's really, really important, actually. And sharing the best practices.
Yeah.
that impact them for years, short term and long term. The biggest mistake. It's part of it though, that I said. There's absolutely no communication after an offer is extended. You know, it ties into everything else. But like no one is communicating at all.
Okay.
They just gave 3 business days to make a decision. Okay, give them the 3 business days. No, reach out, be proactive. It could be probably in one of these two, but that's a huge one, you know, no communication at all. You know, waiting too long, having the wrong person, no one offers to answer any questions. Maybe it could be like, you know, no communication at all between extending the offer and offer decision by the candidate.
How long are these candidates usually given to make a decision?
Anywhere from, so hiring company can say we want a decision the next day. They want to be aggressive. I don't like that approach because typically rock stars are thinking more deeply about their decisions. What I recommend is 3 business days. If they need a little bit of an extension, then yes, let's allow for some flexibility.
Right.
Maybe a mistake could be there's no flexibility with the deadline, and they think the aggressive approach is the right approach with the rock star, when actually it can harm, it could repel them.
Yeah.
I think that could be a huge breakdown where they feel pressured.
Yeah.
And they're just like, nah, this is not for me. I've heard that. I don't know a specific story that comes to mind, but I've definitely heard that before where the aggressive approach did not work in their favor. And so being reasonable with the time frame that they have for a decision, in which, again, maybe standard, let's say 3 business days, but adding cushion of a couple business days if needed. But not using the aggressive approach of, oh, we need a decision by tomorrow. Huge companies sometimes do that.
Okay.
But I don't see that working with a true rock star. They're going to say, I need some more time.
Probably doesn't happen often, but do you ever get situations where rock stars, let's say they get 5 days to decide, and after 5 days, they either don't say anything or they say, I need more time.
It happens.
I guess at that point, would the company simply have to say, all right, they're not a yes, so we gotta keep interviewing other people, or maybe even extend the offer to our number 2 choice.
And sometimes there's a good reason for them to need a little bit more time. Sometimes you might just have to be direct and mention, we do have another candidate. If you're unable to make an offer, we will need to extend it to someone else. And so the urgency can be incorporated at that point because now you've been reasonable.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Like you should use a tactic like that when you've already extended reasonableness.
Yeah.
Or else, and this has happened too, you give too much time. And it's like, okay, you have to also be that organization that has options and not just them. And so using one of those tactics is fair at this point. You've been reasonable. Now it's fair for you to get a decision in a reasonable period of time and de-risk your situation by extending an offer to the other candidate.
Yeah, that's good. And
then sometimes that pressure tactic can say, hey, like this candidate might say, oh yeah, you know what? It just gives them like that push to say, yeah, what am I doing? I'm taking too much time. I'm going to accept.
Yeah.
Or it could go the other way around. At minimum, you'll have a decision. You'll know what the hell to do. You won't waste too much time and energy and effort. And now you have another offer out.